And like many Oklahomans, the story of the Dust Bowl is also the story of my family. I grew up hearing of the hardships and a sky the color of copper. But most of all, I learned from my parents' stories the value of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds.
I've never seen anything as dark in my life as that was.
It was a day my mother will always remember.
We were all at church on one Sunday night. A man came in from outside and told us there was a bad cloud coming up, and we better get home while we could.
Black Sunday, April 14th, 1935.
Oh, it was so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And Daddy told me to hold his belt in the back, you know. He was going to lead us all home. So we were all lined up and holding on to each other. We were at the yard fence before we could see the light in the window. And when Daddy saw the light, well, he said, "Oh, Mama's got a light on, so we're all right now."
Before it was done, Black Sunday left a coating of Oklahoma topsoil on ships in New York Harbor. One of the worst sandstorms of the dirty 30s, but certainly not the only one. It's estimated, over the course of the decade, an area 500 miles long by 300 miles wide lost its topsoil.
Because it would blow in the window, blow in even though you had the windows closed, you know, and the doors closed. It would still blow around them and get all over your house. You could leave your tracks in the floor. If you had a sandstorm one day, you got it cleaned up, you know, and got the house cleaned up, but you probably wouldn't have wanted to get it cleaned up and here'd be another one.
And while people shut themselves indoors, plants and animals weren't so fortunate. What did that do to crops? What did it do to your family's farm?
There wasn't any crops. That was a bad year, and I think that was the year that Grandpa and Daddy put their cotton together, and it made one bale from both farms, Grandpa's farm and ours. And of course, it affected the feed crops too that fed the animals.
And while times were tough for farmers that owned their own land, they were even harder for the 60% of farmers that rented. Called sharecroppers, they were already on the edge of poverty. And when the black blizzards blew in, they lost not just their crops, but their way of life. Beginning a mass migration that literally changed the face of our state. This is Wreck, Oklahoma, or at least what was Wreck, Oklahoma, a small farming community that my father was born in. And like dozens of other agrarian communities, when the crops dried up, so did the town, sending thousands onto the roads looking for work.
I can't even remember when I wasn't working in the fields, really, because I was so young I don't even remember it.
For my father's family, the Dust Bowl was just the final straw that broke their economic back. During the 1930s, the federal government paid farmers to take land out of production in an effort to raise the price of cotton. And with no need for sharecropper labor, families like my father's found themselves homeless.
I remember when we made cornbread out of bran that we had for the horses to feed them, you know, because my uncle bought the feed for the horses, and so we used it to make cornbread out of several times, you know. And lots of times, hey, it has been times in my life, hey, we just didn't have nothing to eat hardly, you know. You just cinch up your belt a little bit and dream of better days, really.
Hitting the road, my father's family was one of over 300,000 Oklahomans that left the state in the 1930s in search of new opportunities. With few available, his family struggled, living behind a road sign, even spending a winter in a tent. School became a luxury, and shoes a rarity.
Didn't have shoes to wear. I went barefoot, started school barefooted, really, you know. Didn't think nothing about it. Well, I thought something about it, but hey, what could you do about it?
Okie soon became a derogatory word, and discrimination became all too common. But determined to endure, families like my father's suffered through the indignations, often with humility and sometimes with defiance.
Well, you had to use a little muscle sometimes, you know, and they knew it, and so they let you alone.
Creating a character that survives even today. Well, times did get better. Federal programs put people to work, and new agricultural practices were implemented to keep the land in place. But it took a war to really break the grip of the Great Depression as farm laborers left their fields for the factory. And as for my family, they endured, yet times remained tough. My mother's family made it through the Dust Bowl, only to lose their farm a decade later due to illness. And as for my father's family, they eventually found a place to call home. From a hard-scrabble beginning, they became business owners, school administrators, civic leaders, even a couple of millionaires. Yet, even with success, it was the lessons learned during the darkest days of the Depression that guided their lives.